A male college student went to meet his online love only to find 3 handsome guys waiting. Surprisingly, these attractive men turned out to be 3 adorable girls. Tokiwa and his 2 friends, Asagi and Hagi, arrived at the mixer full of anticipation. It was their first mixer, and they were invited by Suo, a classmate from a discussion group. The 3 girls had already arrived, but to Tokiwa's group, the seats were occupied by 3 good-looking guys. Tokiwa quickly called Suo to ask about the situation. Suo had already seen them and came over to greet them, chiding them for being late. She explained that they were dressed as men because they had just finished working at a cross-dressing bar and didn't have time to change. Tokiwa and his friends accepted the explanation and stayed. Suo suggested playing the king game to ease everyone's nerves and deepen connections. The person who drew the king could choose 2 numbers to kiss. The first king, Asagi, picked numbers 2 and 5, which were Suo and Kohaku. Both girls kissed without hesitation. Hagi felt something was off, questioning why they were watching handsome guys kiss. However, his confusion escalated when it was his turn to be king. He ended up choosing Tokiwa, and Suo, still proactive, pondered where to kiss on Tokiwa's handsome face. Tokiwa couldn't keep calm, reminding himself they were girls, but that only excited him more, causing him to freeze up. Halfway through the mixer, the 3 guys couldn't take it anymore and tried to leave, but 2 followed them, luckily pulled away by Kohaku. Meanwhile, Suo appeared to be up to no good, preparing more gifts for them. Tokiwa's friends, now in the mood, began discussing which girl they liked. Hagi found it hard to choose among the 3 handsome girls. Then, Tokiwa received a message from Suo apologizing for their attire at the mixer and included a photo of the 3 girls in their usual feminine dresses, instantly capturing the hearts of the 3 college guys. They were reminded that although the girls looked like handsome men, they were indeed cute girls inside. This revitalized their spirits. Returning to the mixer, they saw Suo and Kohaku acting flirtatiously, with Tabizi taking photos. It was hard to imagine them as the cute girls from the photo. Suo then asked how late Tokiwa and his friends could stay and invited them to continue at karaoke. As they approached the reception, the 3 girls dazzled the receptionist. Suo then proposed a singing contest with penalties for the lowest scores. Unbeknownst to her, Tokiwa was an excellent singer and readily accepted the challenge. If he won, Suo and her 2 friends had to change back into women's clothing. The 3 had no objections. Thus, Tokiwa performed at his best, singing to a near-perfect score of 99. He thought he had secured a win, but to everyone's surprise, Suo scored a perfect 100, astounding everyone present with her performance. Consequently, Tokiwa had to accept a penalty. When the waiter came in with snacks, he saw a group of men surrounding a female high school student, which seemed a bit odd. But then the student revealed himself to be a man, reassuring the waiter. Tokiwa, embarrassed to be seen like this, was teased by Suo, who remarked that the staff were used to such sights, and she was happy to play along with Tokiwa. Their interaction inspired To, who saw the potential for a new comic theme about a prince-like handsome man and a pitiful young man meeting at karaoke, a typical setting for boys' love stories. To also needed photos for her publication and started making Kohaku pose in various embarrassing ways, but Kohaku was reluctant to continue modeling for her. Asagi, however, was interested, so Kohaku sacrificed himself to save Asagi by casually grabbing a drink, which Hagi then reminded him was his, resulting in an indirect kiss that seemed to deeply affect Kohaku, much to Hagi's amusement, though he wondered why he would be moved by a man in disguise. The next moment, seeing Kohaku's shy expression made Hagi's heart flutter, realizing his feelings might be changing. After leaving the karaoke, To suggested visiting a game center, which everyone agreed to. At the claw machine, To grabbed a figurine on her first try, teaching Asagi how to use the machine while embracing him from behind to guide him. Asagi was thrilled when he finally grabbed a figurine, while To found their pose highly inspirational and had Kohaku take a photo. Hagi, trying to ease the awkwardness with Kohaku, accidentally won a cute doll from the machine, which he self-consciously offered to Kohaku, regretting it as he thought a handsome man wouldn't like such a doll. Surprisingly, Kohaku seemed to actually like it, but wouldn't admit it, revealing his tsundere nature. The atmosphere between them was just right. Suddenly, Asagi mentioned he was hungry. Meanwhile, Tokiwa noticed Suo staring at something. She wanted to take photo booth pictures, but a sign prohibited men from entering alone due to her male attire, which might trouble other customers. Tokiwa suggested using a smartphone instead, which Suo misinterpreted as an invitation to take photos together, pulling Tokiwa in for a selfie and wrapping her arms around him. Unable to contain his smile, Tokiwa was caught off guard. To continued to take pictures for her material and blocked Asagi from interrupting the couple. They then continued their evening at a noodle shop. The next morning, Hagi and Asagi didn't show up for class. Suo was also absent. Just as Tokiwa was about to enjoy a quiet day, Suo appeared dressed as a man, acting very friendly toward him. Two girls behind them were visibly enamored, their eyes filled with hearts. To avoid the situation, Tokiwa resorted to frantically sending memes to his friends, but received no responses. Then, Suo brought up the fun she had the previous day. Tokiwa took the chance to ask why she had invited him to the gathering, but Suo dodged the question. Just then, the teacher arrived for the lesson, and Tokiwa realized he had forgotten his handouts. Suo quickly lent hers to him, making it difficult for him to concentrate. When Suo went to submit an assignment, the two girls immediately questioned Tokiwa about his relationship with the prince, a mysterious, handsome figure who had suddenly appeared at school. No one knew which department he was from, and everything about him was shrouded in mystery. The girls eagerly sought details about Suo from Tokiwa. When Suo returned, she saw Tokiwa chatting happily with the girls and joined in, deliberately letting others misunderstand her relationship with him, fueling the girls' fujoshi spirits. After class, Hagi and Asagi arrived to find Suo and Tokiwa hand in hand, mistakenly thinking they were a couple. Tokiwa didn't elaborate much, but asked if they had heard of the prince. It turns out that person was Suo. Hagi was shocked, as this was even more dramatic than the rumors suggested. As the next class was about to start, Suo purposely showed off her phone's screensaver, which was a selfie with Tokiwa from the day before. After the last mixer, Tu was so enchanted by Asagi that she asked him out again to model just for her. Tokiwa and Hagi were somewhat worried, so they secretly followed the two when they met. Given Asagi's naive nature, he'd help count the cash even if he were being conned. Asagi was excited, asking to what he should pose for. Tu grabbed his hand and took several photos of it for her manga reference. Upon hearing Tu was a manga artist, Asagi excitedly inquired about the genre. Tu tactfully indicated it was a romance story set in a battle manga, which thrilled Asagi even more, imagining his hands featured in action-packed poses. Tu, not wanting to burst his bubble, just nodded along. Then she tied Asagi's hands with a tie, pulled them above his head, and pushed down for another photo angle. Kohaku walked in on this scene, discovered Tokiwa and Hagi hiding, and knew what To's manga involved. While helping Asagi untie, she told him he could refuse if uncomfortable, but Asagi seemed far from disliking it, even hoping Tu would ask him again. As a thank you, he wanted to see To's manga, which Kohaku immediately vetoed since it was adult only. After the mixer, Tokiwa and Asagi both made significant progress with the girls they met, leaving Hagi alone and possibly disliked by Kohaku. Drowning his sorrows with alcohol, Hagi coincidentally met Kohaku on the street, still in men's clothing, delivering a forgotten item to a client. Just then, a thunderstorm started, and Hagi quickly pulled her under shelter. Noticing Kohaku's wet shirt, he offered his jacket, feeling flustered. Kohaku wore his jacket, making Hagi question his orientation as he felt unexpectedly attracted, telling himself he wasn't swooning over a handsome guy. Just then, the store manager offered them an umbrella, and they left together under the small umbrella, shoulders touching, with Hagi's heart racing again. They reached Kohaku's workplace, and she invited Hagi in, but he fled, questioning his sexual orientation, after realizing he had tilted the umbrella to keep her dry. Suo invited Tokiwa, Hagi, and Asagi to a cross-dressing bar, which intrigued Asagi, but Hagi was apprehensive about his feelings upon seeing Kohaku. At the bar entrance, Tokiwa hesitated to enter, until Suo appeared behind them, and opened the door to a new world for them. Several handsome women welcomed them unanimously, and with great enthusiasm. At Suo's recommendation, Asagi ordered a special cocktail mixed by To. The drink featured a red top and a yellow bottom, representing To's favorite pairing colors. She explained to Asagi that red represented the dominant role and yellow the submissive. which Asagi didn't understand but enjoyed nonetheless. Tokiwa couldn't help but remark how different this place was from the maid cafe he once visited with Hagi, where they ordered omelet rice. When Suo heard this, she ordered omelet rice for Tokiwa too, and showed him how to squirt ketchup around it, their faces coming dangerously close as their fingers intertwined. Suo then struck a flirty pose and asked Tokiwa who made his heart flutter more, her or the maid. Tokiwa blurted out Suo's name, while Asagi continued to enjoy his cocktail, remarking on how good it was. As the place got busier, Tokiwa wanted to quickly finish his meal and leave, but felt awkward eating with Suo watching. Just as Suo was about to feed him, she was called to serve another table. Asagi then called Kohaku over to join them. However, Kohaku was completely different, embodying a domineering CEO persona, implying that guests should serve the staff instead. Seeing that Tokiwa and others had finished their meals, she got up to order more and casually tousled Tokiwa's hair, which too criticized, saying a domineering CEO wouldn't do that to a man she just met. Kohaku was speechless and felt the persona didn't suit her, but too coached her thoroughly. Noticing Hagi wasn't there, she casually asked about it, and Asagi honestly mentioned Hagi didn't want to come, so she couldn't return his coat just yet. Despite needing to maintain her persona, Kohaku tried to show a kind expression and asked Asagi and Tokiwa to tell Hagi, "I will definitely return what I owe him." This earned To's approval but confused the others, wondering if Hagi had wronged Kohaku in some way. During a break, Kohaku again expressed how unsuitable she felt portraying a domineering CEO, although the guests seemed to like it. Her colleagues then suggested trying other personas, but only 3 were left: a seductive big brother, a Chunabu, and a yandere. Kohaku immediately dismissed the seductive role, was confused by Chunabu, which to demonstrated without clarity, and knew yandere had been popular when Suo performed it, but were too intense. Ultimately, Kohaku had to continue as the domineering CEO, but Tu offered her Manga for reference and suggested she might try the seductive role if nothing else worked. Kohaku suddenly asked Hagi to meet, and Hagi panicked instantly. He quickly sought advice from his close friends. Recalling what Kohaku had said before, Tokiwa and Asagi couldn't help but worry for Hagi, making Hagi even more anxious. It turned out the meeting was to get a scolding, and he felt he couldn't refuse. With trepidation, Hagi showed up at the arranged spot, and Kohaku spotted him early. Upon entering the shop, Hagi immediately apologized, confusing Kohaku. She just wanted to return his coat. Hearing that Tokiwa and Asagi had influenced Hagi, she explained she was just following the domineering CEO role. Today, she wanted to return his jacket. Hagi then relaxed, and he couldn't help but be taken by the sweet scent from the cloves. This was when a waitress came over to take their order, noting the shop's specialty was a fruit parfait, but Kohaku ordered just coffee. Hagi wanted to try the parfait, but Kohaku dismissed the idea, arguing it would look odd as she was dressed as a man. Hagi was shocked, never considering this before, believing that enjoying food had nothing to do with gender. Kohaku recalled being judged by girls for liking sweets while in male attire, which had made her cautious. Hagi had never been aware of this, thinking Kohaku either disliked sweets or her persona prevented it. Left with no choice, Kohaku admitted she indeed loved sweets, striking a chord with Hagi. Both ordered a fruit parfait, and it looked delicious. Kohaku showed a genuine smile, almost overwhelming Hagi. No doubts remained. He truly had feelings for her. That evening, Kohaku went to work at the cross-dressing bar, finding Tu exhausted from working on a fanzine. Dissatisfied with her earlier drafts, she had scrapped them 2 days ago to redraw them, with the print deadline the next morning. Tu was about to leave work to finish the drafts, and no one else was available to help. Tu then called Asagi, who became the first of the trio to enter the scene, thinking he was to model but ended up helping with the comic. Tu handed him a stack of drafts to fill in blacks and apply screen tones. Though not modeling, Asagi found drawing comics fun and gladly helped. Then Suo called, inquiring if Tu had found help. Tu mentioned Asagi, prompting immediate worry from both, considering the fanzine was adult only. Realizing Asagi might be shocked and flee, Tu quickly took back the drafts from him, selecting less explicit ones. As Asagi began working, he was puzzled, noticing the recurring red faces, mistaking the story for caring for a sick friend. Remembering, Tu said she drew battle manga, Asagi curiously peeked over to see if she was sketching a fight scene. Instantly, To covered his eyes, claiming it was to protect him from being traumatized. Yet, Asagi caught a glimpse and remarked it was more of a close combat. Tu was relieved by Asagi's naive reaction. After pulling an all-nighter, they managed to submit the drafts just before the deadline, all thanks to Asagi's help. Including last night, Tu had been up for 3 days straight and was unsteady while paying Asagi for his work. Concerned, Asagi pushed her onto the bed, coincidentally mimicking a pose from the manga. Asagi even recited a line from the manga, "Don't move," before adjusting Tu's shoulders and leaving, but Tu was panicked. The pages Asagi helped blacken had no dialogues, so why did he know the lines? Perhaps he had seen more of the plot than expected. Worrisome, given the mature content. Worried Asagi might not return to help, Tu went out to explain, only to be pushed back onto the bed by Asagi, who applied a hot towel and tucked her in, promising to take care of her like the characters in her manga. Eventually, they both fell asleep. Now, both Tu and Asagi, as well as Kohaku and Hagi, had made significant progress. Suo couldn't fall behind. Meanwhile, Tokiwa went to copy her homework, but couldn't find anyone because Suo was in drag, which Tokiwa found unusual. Upon realizing again that Suo was indeed a girl, Suo handed over her homework. However, Tokiwa couldn't concentrate, distracted by how pretty Suo looked in drag. To thank her, Tokiwa thought of giving a gift, and Suo seized the moment to invite him for a drink alone, since she was off work. They went to a bar where Suo switched to male attire and whispered to Tokiwa, asking if he preferred her in drag. Determined to make Suo happy, Tokiwa noticed 2 girls from before, eyeing him with displeasure, wondering why he could be alone with the prince. Jealousy distorted their faces, and they were tempted to berate Tokiwa. Seeing Suo smile at Tokiwa, they could only assume they were close friends, recalling the prince previously saying they were just friends. Could there be more to their relationship? Drunk from Suo's continuous toasts, Tokiwa said he felt sleepy. Suo pulled him close, letting him rest on her lap. Though he knew he should refuse, his muddled mind allowed Suo to fool him into falling asleep. Unresponsive to Suo poking his face, a perfect chance for Suo to lean down and kiss him, seen clearly by the 2 girls. Now their relationship was surely more than just friends. Tokiwa and his 5 friends planned a trip to the zoo. After 3 male university students arrived at the meeting point, the 3 girls were nowhere to be seen. Just then, a car pulled up behind them. Asagi was suddenly pulled into the car. This story actually began a few days earlier. After leaving To's house, Asagi couldn't wait to share his experience with his friends, mentioning that he had to lie down to sleep. Tokiwa and Hagi were shocked. Things were moving so fast between them. Meanwhile, Hagi was still figuring out his sexuality, but he had also gone for ice cream with Kohaku. Tokiwa mentioned he had drinks with Suo a few days ago. Suo then arrived, thanked Asagi for helping To, and learned about Hagi's trip to the dessert shop with Kohaku. It seemed everyone was getting along well, so she suggested they all go out together that weekend. Tokiwa and the others were looking forward to seeing Suo and the other girls in women's clothes, but they were destined to be disappointed. The person who pulled Asagi into the car was To, and Asagi was cozily nestled in To's arms, looking very dainty. Suo, who was driving, insisted in a tone that brooked no argument that Tokiwa sit in the passenger seat. Tokiwa, slightly disappointed he couldn't see Suo in women's clothes, couldn't refuse. However, Suo in men's clothes was unexpectedly handsome. Noticing Tokiwa's gaze, Suo reached over to help him with the seatbelt, leaving Tokiwa utterly charmed. Despite driving, Suo was exceedingly considerate to Tokiwa, making him feel pampered like a prince. The thought of spending the whole day together was almost too much for Tokiwa. Tu and Asagi then expressed a desire to stop at a nearby rest area, so Suo decided to take a detour, noting that Tokiwa seemed tired. Little did they know, the most exhausting part was yet to come. Upon arriving, Suo suddenly leaned over Tokiwa and smoothly parked the car, completely bewitching him. Tokiwa insisted on switching seats with Hagi for the rest of the journey, as he couldn't handle being flirted with much more. The 6 finally arrived at the zoo. Suo and the other 2 girls went ahead to buy tickets, instantly capturing the hearts of the nearby girls. Tokiwa and his group felt mixed emotions. Why go to the zoo with such handsome guys? It seemed so out of place, but actually, Suo was mainly interested in seeing the baby pandas. Thinking the other 3 didn't like this, she looked visibly upset. Frightened, the 3 guys quickly explained they had no objections. making Suo instantly smile again. Everyone had different preferences for what they wanted to see, so Suo suggested visiting her favorite spots first and regrouping at noon. She then grabbed Tokiwa's wrist and led him away. Tu also took Asagi with him, leaving Kohaku and Hagi to pair up by default. Hagi was equally nervous, fearing he might fall for Kohaku in men's clothes, which would indeed confirm his doubts about his sexuality. Kohaku wanted to see the guinea pigs, so Hagi followed him there. Seeing the adorable guinea pigs, Kohaku's eyes sparkled. The keeper told visitors they could hold them, and she picked one up. It was so cute that Hagi couldn't bear to look, feeling emotionally stirred. However, he quickly convinced himself that finding Kohaku cute might just be a synergistic effect due to the cute surroundings. Then, turning back, he heard Kohaku remark that the guinea pig resembled Mr. Hagi. At that moment, Hagi's brain stopped working, and he blurted out, "How cute," while looking at Kohaku's face. Kohaku agreed, saying the guinea pig was indeed cute. Hagi quickly clarified he meant the guinea pig, not realizing Kohaku had almost misunderstood since he was looking at her face when he complimented. The real misunderstanding arose then. Kohaku gently stroked the guinea pig in her arms, and Hagi grew increasingly annoyed. Why did the guinea pig have such a sly, human-like expression? On the other side, Tu took Asagi to see various cockroaches. Asagi screamed in fright, while Tu watched with fascination, almost unable to stop, unable to handle the cockroaches. Asagi hugged Tu from behind and buried her face in his broad shoulders, insisting she was fine and that Tu could continue if he wanted. This reminded Tu of a trembling Pomeranian, evoking a sense of guilt, so he decided to leave with Asagi. However, halfway through, a huge spider caught their attention, and Tu immediately approached it. Thinking they were already outside, Asagi looked up and found herself face to face with the spider, screaming on the spot. Tokiwa, in another area, almost heard her scream, but was quickly distracted by Suo, whose princely charm irresistibly drew the girls around him, causing a crowd outside the tiger enclosure. Suo seemed to enjoy the majestic tigers and expressed a desire to be as imposing as them. Tokiwa couldn't help but imagine Suo fitting perfectly with the tigers. As noon approached, Suo took Tokiwa's hand to meet up with the others. A little girl staring blankly at them called out, "Prince!" upon seeing Suo's face. She had been separated from her family and couldn't find them despite searching for a long time. Suo took her hand, reassuring her that she had done well and would now take her to a place where they could find her father. The girl clung to Suo and wouldn't let go. Tokiwa and Suo then took her to the Lost Children's Service Center and called the others to explain the situation. It seemed they couldn't join them at the panda viewing. Tokiwa told them to go ahead, while Suo suggested Tokiwa could also leave, as she could manage alone. But how could Tokiwa possibly leave Suo there by herself? Suddenly, Tokiwa realized that visiting the pandas was Suo's idea. Although she said it was okay, her radiant aura had faded. Tokiwa noticed she might be feeling down. Spotting a discarded box a staff member was pulling, Tokiwa quickly greeted Suo and followed. The box contained discarded panda headgear. Tokiwa also made a quick stop at the souvenir shop and returned wearing the headgear. He was out of breath from running and took a moment to catch his breath before he could speak. He then gave Suo the tiger and panda keychains he had bought. This spontaneous display of boyfriend-like effort really touched Suo's heart. As Tokiwa explained non-stop, Suo couldn't take her eyes off him, admiringly saying she really liked him, though it was unclear if she meant the keychains or Tokiwa himself. Just then, the little girl woke up and asked if Tokiwa and Suo were dating, but neither of them answered. Upon seeing the panda head, Tokiwa remembered to return the headgear. The girl's father arrived after hearing a broadcast and expressed his deep gratitude to Tokiwa and Suo. The two then went to meet up with the others. Asagi had sent them photos, and Kohaku expressed sympathy for Suo, who responded that she had indeed seen the pandas. Back at school, Suo kept showing off the two keychains everywhere. Tu invited Asagi to meet at a doujinshi convention. It was Asagi's first time attending such an event, and he was dazzled upon arrival. Besides the various cosplayers, many people were selling their doujinshi and merchandise. Tu had also brought his own doujinshi comics and sent Asagi a location to meet up. Unfortunately, Asagi couldn't understand it and was about to ask someone for directions when Tu grabbed his face, having come to find him personally. Within a few steps, Asagi was distracted by some dolls and Tu had to pull him along to avoid losing each other in the crowd, to even put a collar on him. Meanwhile, since there was no one at the booth, readers waiting to buy the books gathered around. When they turned and saw the booth owner leading someone by the collar, their eyes lit up. They wondered why a handsome guy would lead another man like that in public. Was it some kind of play? However, Asagi was oblivious and even planned to buy a book to support To's business. Remembering Kohaku's warning that uninitiated people might be traumatized by certain images, To misled Asagi by saying the items were only for those with special training. Asagi obediently put down the book while the Fujoshi nearby enjoyed the scene even more. To made space for Asagi to come in and help at the booth. Unexpectedly, someone messaged her. It was Miss Circle, saying she had saved a copy of the new issue for her. Excited, To left Asagi alone at the booth and rushed to Miss Circle's booth to get her new issue, leaving in a flurry of anticipation. Meanwhile, Asagi managed the booth well, though he didn't quite understand what To had drawn. He was happy to help and felt good about it. Just then, To's female fans arrived and were surprised to see a man at the booth. Asagi quickly explained that he was just helping out and that Teacher 2 had stepped away momentarily. Fans hurried to buy a new issue and eagerly explained to Asagi just how talented Teacher 2 is. They praised To's sensitive emotional depictions and powerful battle scenes. As they were about to touch on more sensitive content, they realized they were speaking to a man and quickly stopped talking. However, Asagi didn't mind at all. He was actually pleased that she liked To's work so much. The fan, overly nervous, feared she might say something disrespectful when meeting To later and asked Asagi to pass on a gift for her. When Asagi declined, advising her to wait and give it to To personally, the fan was surprised, but stayed. Asagi knew how serious To was about her work and wanted her to hear the fan's thoughts directly. Just as they were talking, To returned. The fan, stunned by To's attractiveness, couldn't speak and thrust the gift into To's arms before fleeing. To appreciated her sentiment, and the interaction between her and Asagi inspired the Fujoshi nearby to use it as reference material. After the event, as Asagi waited for To pack up, he saw that everyone had been successful. To his surprise, To had changed back into women's clothes, even in women's attire, To still exuded a boyfriend's charm, and they celebrated with a barbecue that night. Asagi took photos and shared them with his brothers. Hagi immediately noticed a girl opposite Asagi and quickly inquired about it. The next morning, Suo received a call from Kohaku, who couldn't reach To and was due to take over. Suo stopped by To's house, where Asagi answered the door and went to wake To. Suo teased them, asking if something had happened last night. Asagi shared that after the doujinshi event, they went for barbecue and continued drinking beer at home because the drinks at the restaurant weren't enough. They ended up drunk. Suo was skeptical that it was just that simple and discreetly asked To if they really just fell asleep after drinking. To confess that she had woken up in the middle of the night a bit excited and took many photos of Asagi while he slept. Asagi, upon hearing this, was a bit shy but surprisingly not angry. To was already changing clothes to go to the bar and asked Asagi if he was free later. While talking, she pulled on the drawstring of his hoodie and invited him to have lunch together at the bar later. Asagi eagerly nodded in agreement. Then, To gave Suo something before they went to the bar. There, Asagi soon enjoyed a special omelet rice made by To. Perhaps charmed by his cuteness, To suddenly leaned in and asked him to feed her a bite. Asagi obediently did so, but To thought there wasn't enough cream. Noticing tomato sauce on the corner of Asagi's mouth, she wiped it off for him. Suo found this amusing, while Kohaku was speechless, feeling like the distance between them had suddenly closed. At that moment, Asagi received a call from Hagi, who questioned why he hadn't replied to his messages the previous night and who the beautiful woman was that he went to the barbecue with. As Asagi ate his omelet rice, he explained it was Miss To. Hearing this, Hagi was even more taken aback. Knowing Asagi was currently at the men's bar with Suo and Kohaku, Hagi fell silent. So Suo texted Tokiwa, inviting him and Hagi to join them for omelet rice. Unfortunately, Hagi didn't come, but having Tokiwa there was enough for Suo. She showed everyone the Tokiwa doll To had made for her and told Tokiwa not to mind it. Then she changed the subject, suggesting they play a game of You Lose If You're Shy. To and Asagi demonstrated first. It started as a normal game, but then To began to flirt heavily with Asagi. Tokiwa, watching, was sweating profusely, realizing ordinary people stood no chance. So when it was Suo and Tokiwa's turn, Tokiwa, aware of Suo's prowess, promptly surrendered. Suo playfully teased him with the Tokiwa doll. Suddenly curious, Tokiwa wondered what she would do with the doll. He feared she might use it to vent her frustrations, but Suo said it was for unspeakable acts, keeping the specifics a secret. Tokiwa was playing games with his brothers when Hagi suddenly asked him, "Do you have feelings for Miss Suo?" Tokiwa, excited, ended the game abruptly and remembered Suo's handsome appearance. Although he was always dazzled by Suo's brilliance, he thought it was natural. Hagi, however, felt it was not the same, and quietly told his brothers, "I think I can accept men now." Tokiwa and Asagi were shocked, and even Hagi was overwhelmed. But whenever he saw Kohaku's smiling face, even in men's clothing, he couldn't control his feelings. Asagi, confused, said, "Isn't Kohaku a girl? Even in men's clothes, she's still a girl." But Hagi began to doubt his sexual orientation, so Asagi suggested they visit the men's bar where Suo works to confirm his feelings. Upon their arrival, Suo lit up at the sight of Tokiwa and quickly pulled him aside since there were no other customers. Asagi was already familiar with the place, but Hagi felt out of place and didn't see Kohaku. Suo, attending to him, was asked by Hagi to say some sweet nothings. Hagi reasoned if he didn't feel anything for such a handsome guy, his orientation was still straight. Suo easily played along and flirted by ruffling Hagi's hair, saying, "Today, you're all mine." However, Hagi felt nothing. Just as he thought he was back to normal, Kohaku appeared, styled as a domineering CEO today, and Hagi's heart raced. Before leaving, Suo hinted that no matter what he said, Hagi wouldn't be moved because it mattered who said it. Hagi realized he had never felt anything for Suo or anyone else, only for Kohaku. Even worried that Kohaku might misunderstand, he hurriedly explained that he came to see her. Kohaku, forgetting her role, spoke sincerely, saying she was also happy to see Mr. Hagi. That single statement overwhelmed Hagi, and he gave up resisting. Indeed, this was love. To mask his nervousness, he ordered a whiskey on the rocks. Only after Kohaku left did he start to panic, wondering what to do next. Suo and Tu quietly watched him. Soon, Kohaku brought the drink, but Hagi, having never had such a strong whiskey, spat it out after one sip. Not wanting to embarrass himself in front of Kohaku, he tried to drink again, but was stopped by Kohaku, who expressed concern for his health and urged him not to overdo it. This made Hagi extremely happy. A week had passed since they returned from the drag bar, and Hagi maintained this happy state. He was sure he had romantic feelings for Kohaku, and found himself increasingly thinking she was adorable, which drove him into a frenzy, startling his brothers. Although his feelings were clear, Kohaku had not suggested meeting one-on-one. Could they only meet at the bar? Hagi felt a sudden drop in his spirits. Seeing his brothers playing with a jump rope, he felt even more despair, wondering if there was no love expert among his acquaintances. Asagi quickly denied this and brought in To, a love expert, to help. Hagi thought Asagi was just bragging about his own relationship, but Asagi genuinely wanted to help, believing To, who drew romance comics, must understand love well. To confidently took on the challenge, though she was really just looking for material. Hagi asked how to get closer to someone he wasn't well acquainted with. To's response was simple. First, find out their weaknesses, then blackmail them. You wouldn't want others to know about this, would you? Hagi immediately rejected the idea, seeking a more natural approach. To suggested inviting them out for drinks and taking advantage after they blacked out, claiming this was quite natural. She even mentioned forced love. The more Hagi heard, the more inappropriate it sounded. Clearly asking To, who was rather unconventional, was a mistake. Indeed, Tu only saw him as material for her stories. Angrily leaving, Hagi never expected to bump into Kohaku on the street. She ran over, worried, seeing him crouching alone and thinking he was unwell. While saying this, she offered him a bottle of water, which made Hagi blush even more. He quickly denied feeling unwell, admitting he was just overwhelmed by his feelings for her. Kohaku, seeing he was all right, prepared to leave. Hagi realized this was a great opportunity to bond and scrambled for a topic to keep her there. However, he could only think of To's inappropriate suggestions and ended up covering his face in embarrassment. Kohaku crouched down next to him, noticing his lack of spirit and remembering his fondness for sweets, invited him to a dessert festival. Hagi couldn't refuse such an opportunity. The next morning, Asagi told Tokiwa that he needed to apologize to Hagi, seeing how upset he had been the day before. Just then, they saw Hagi greeting them cheerfully and asking Asagi to thank Tu for him. Tokiwa was curious about what had happened. Hagi showed them a poster, revealing that Kohaku had asked him on a date. Tokiwa questioned whether it was just the two of them. Unlike previous times when Suo and others joined, Hagi realized his mistake, but since Kohaku had asked him, he decided it was a date regardless. Tokiwa and Asagi couldn't bear to dampen his enthusiasm. In fact, Kohaku had also invited Suo and To, but both had other plans that day. Kohaku was about to message Hagi to cancel when Suo tried to stop her. Tu suggested Kohaku just go with Hagi alone, but she felt it would be awkward, and the message was already sent and read quickly. Kohaku thought Hagi hadn't reacted much when she asked him out, assuming he wouldn't expect much. However, She soon learned from Tokiwa and Asagi that Hagi was devastated and confined to bed. Now, neither knew what to do and sought help from Suo and others. Kohaku hadn't realized Hagi's passion for desserts, and with the festival over, Tu had a good idea for her. While Hagi was at home crying, he was scolded by his sister. He was in tears, thinking Kohaku disliked him. Then, the doorbell rang. His sister pushed him to answer the door, and to his surprise, it was Kohaku. Hagi, thinking he was dreaming, closed the door, then opened it again after realizing it was real. He asked Kohaku why she came. She explained that Tokiwa told her where he lived, and then sincerely apologized for canceling their planned meetup, especially since he was looking forward to it. Kohaku clarified that her mention of liking referred to Hagi's love for desserts, not her knowing about his feelings for her, which scared Hagi. She then offered him a homemade cake roll as a gesture of apology, saying to advised it as more heartfelt. Hagi felt immensely grateful to To. Just as he invited Kohaku inside, his sister suddenly appeared. Before Hagi could explain, Kohaku ran off, leading to a new misunderstanding. Suo, who had been secretly watching, heard Hagi call out to his sister and quickly understood the situation. As the instigator, Suo felt responsible for resolving the misunderstanding between Hagi and Kohaku and started planning how to clear it up. Kohaku mistakenly thought Hagi was living with his girlfriend and quickly ran away. Tokiwa, who had been secretly watching, worried this would make Hagi even more depressed. Suo said he could help and invited Tokiwa to walk around nearby. Unaware of Suo's real intentions, Tokiwa agreed, but Suo had no plans to come up with a solution and just took him shopping, even visiting a clothing store. Since they often wore men's clothes recently, Suo unconsciously headed to the men's section, picked out clothes for himself and Tokiwa, and even chose matching outfits. However, fearing being mobbed by Suo's fans, Tokiwa quickly refused. Suo then called the store manager, who immediately understood their relationship and praised how suitable the outfit was for Tokiwa. Suo posed so appealingly that Tokiwa couldn't refuse, and they ended up buying matching outfits. After shopping, Tokiwa reminded Suo it was time to think of ways to cheer up Hagi. Suo then considered how to give Hagi and Kohaku a chance to talk and clear up the misunderstanding. That's when she spotted a tent and camping gear in a store window. Camping was popular among young people, and she thought a group activity would be perfect for them to join. So they set off camping over the weekend. It was everyone's first time camping. Asagi was very excited, but Hagi was confused and hadn't realized he was suddenly brought out to nature. Tokiwa quickly explained it was to help him change his mood, as he had been cooped up at home alone. Asagi asked what he had been doing at home, and sure enough, Hagi had been thinking about Kohaku and wondering why she had suddenly run off, whether she had noticed his feelings, and what he should say next time they met. The more he spoke, the more nervous Hagi got. Asagi told him to take deep breaths, unaware that he was about to see Kohaku, whom he had been missing. Thinking it would be nice to enjoy a day with his good friends, Hagi then saw the dazzling trio in men's clothing, the surprise his friends had prepared for him. However, Kohaku merely glanced at Hagi before lowering her head. At that moment, Suo explained that she had instructed Tokiwa not to tell him because she was afraid he would run away at the last minute. Then, Asagi broke the awkward silence by suggesting that everyone play grass sliding as there was a slope nearby. To reminded everyone to set up the tents first, so they divided the tasks. Suo directly arranged for Hagi and Kohaku to start a fire, giving them some time alone. However, the two sat there in silence, creating an extremely awkward atmosphere. Meanwhile, Asagi seemed to be having a lot of fun. Hagi tried to make conversation by complimenting the cake Kohaku had brought last time, which only made her more bewildered. After some hesitation, she asked Hagi if the person at his home was angry. Hagi, who only has a violent sister at home, explained that his sister did indeed beat him after Kohaku left. Hearing this, Kohaku knelt down and apologized, explaining that she never intended to disturb his date with his girlfriend. Hagi then realized that Kohaku had mistaken his sister for a girlfriend and quickly clarified, even showing a photo to prove they looked alike. With the misunderstanding cleared, Kohaku was relieved, thinking how awful it would have been if she had inadvertently acted inappropriately by interrupting a sweet date and offering her homemade sweets in front of his girlfriend. Thankfully, they were just family. Kohaku exclaimed twice that it was such a relief, finally dissipating the awkwardness between them. Hagi was thrilled. He wondered what Kohaku meant by her relief. Was she glad he didn't have a girlfriend? Just as he was about to confess his true feelings to Kohaku, his nerves got the better of him. Seeing his hesitance, Kohaku pulled a cotton candy from her bag, hoping he wouldn't mind if she made other sweets for him in the future. Hagi's heart pounded like thunder. completely won over. Suo, noticing that the two had reconciled, felt relieved as well. After setting up the tents, several people lined up, ready to slide down the grass. Everyone had their own mat except for Asagi, who was sitting together with To, much to Hagi's envy. They seemed so natural together that they lost control of their direction and rolled down the hill. Later, everyone started a beer and barbecue party. Suo had prepared all the food, while To prepared grilled rice balls for dessert. Everyone enjoyed the meal. Suo and To sat aside drinking, and To suddenly asked Suo if it was still time to help others, noting that Hagi and Kohaku seemed fine now. To thought he was close to winning over Suo, but seeing Tokiwa, there seemed to be no awareness at all. However, Suo was not worried. She planned to win Tokiwa over slowly to avoid failure. After everyone had their fill, they gathered around the campfire for a night chat. Hagi, filled with happiness, couldn't wait to wash the dishes with Kohaku. Asagi and To took out the trash, leaving Suo and Tokiwa alone. The air at the campsite was fresh, and they could see the stars clearly in the sky. They quietly watched the stars together, something Tokiwa from a few months ago would never have imagined happening with Suo. When a cloud moved away and revealed the moon, Tokiwa couldn't help but remark on the beauty of the moon tonight. Suo teased him, calling it a romantic confession, referring to a classic line by Natsume Soseki. Tokiwa, startled, began to ramble explanations, fearing Suo might misunderstand. Suo knew Tokiwa wasn't that romantic, but she stood in front of him, blocking the moon, and repeated, "The moon is beautiful tonight." Before Tokiwa could respond, Asagi and the others came back noisily. They all enjoyed the beautiful scenery for a while longer before preparing to head back to their tents for sleep. Tokiwa was still thinking about what Suo had said. Looking at her then, Suo really seemed to match the moon. The tents were split between 3 boys and 3 girls. Tokiwa and Asagi fell asleep as soon as they lay down. Hagi, however, suffered from insomnia all night, too excited at the thought of Kohaku sleeping in the tent next door to fall asleep. So, he got up early to watch the sunrise and inwardly scolded himself, even as 2 birds nearby flaunted their affection in front of him. Initially upset by this, he remembered Kohaku liked cute things and thought she would be happy if he took a photo for her. As Hagi was about to take a picture, Kohaku suddenly appeared and greeted him with a good morning, noting how early he was up. Hagi didn't dare admit he hadn't slept at all, while Kohaku, used to waking early, had planned to take a walk, but ran over when she saw him. This unexpected encounter hit Hagi hard, making the morning even more overwhelming. They started chatting, and Kohaku asked how Hagi liked the camping trip. He was genuinely enjoying it, which relieved Kohaku. She had been worried because the camping trip was Suo's idea, kept secret from Hagi. Fortunately, Hagi was having fun. Kohaku shared that, although she loved gathering around the campfire and admiring the night sky, her favorite part was this relaxed moment. However, her words, which sounded almost like a confession, went unheard by Hagi, who was so relaxed that he leaned on Kohaku and fell asleep. Unaware of what he had missed, the 2 of them leaned on each other, resembling the sparrows beside them. Today, Tokiwa unexpectedly encountered Suo dressed as a woman, and they decided to go to the classroom together. They talked about their recent camping trip. Since returning from the campsite, Hagi has been acting strangely. Suddenly, someone rode by on a bicycle, and Tokiwa quickly pulled Suo to his side. This scene was witnessed by 2 young fans of Suo, who usually saw him dressed as a man. From then on, Tokiwa felt as if he was being watched, perhaps because he was spending time with Suo. While Suo was checking his phone, he was suddenly pulled away by the 2 fans. They immediately started to express how difficult it had been for them. They had once seen Suo, dressed as a man, stealing a kiss from Tokiwa, and were worried about the prince's sexual orientation becoming public. They had been working hard to keep other fans from discovering his relationship with Tokiwa. To their dismay, it seemed Tokiwa was already close to the prince, yet he was also seen flirting with another girl. Tokiwa then realized that they were referring to Suo dressed as a woman. However, he couldn't disclose the prince's true identity. While he was trying to figure out how to explain, the fans demanded him to choose between the 2. Tokiwa, confused, asked why he had to choose one at all, which they perceived as a playboy's remark, making them so angry one wanted to slap him. Fortunately, Suo intervened just in time, charming the fans and leaving them blushing. Suo had already heard their conversation, and now, with a tone of accusation, asked Tokiwa who that woman was. Tokiwa, thinking Suo hadn't realized, quietly told her that he had only talked to her. Suo was delighted, as she had asked on purpose, and explained to the fans that it was actually her sister. Meanwhile, Asagi went alone to a bar known for its male dressing staff. Besides To, there was another employee there. They were surprised to hear that To had gone camping too. At that moment, Asagi sneezed and spilled his drink on his clothes. the older sister at the bar helped him take the clothes to a washing machine to clean them. Thankfully, the bar wasn't busy, but it was awkward being half-dressed. To quickly thought to lend him a spare uniform from the bar, which surprisingly fit well. Thus, the customers mistook him for a new employee, and he ended up having a disjointed conversation with Asagi. The customer agreed to try the drink recommended by Asagi, which was the same one Tu had recommended before, my recommended CP, to return to the bar and watch them while mixing drinks, deciding not to alert them, as they seemed unaware. The customer then casually asked about their relationship. Asagi shared that he often visited To's house and even stayed overnight. He then shifted the conversation to the elder sister at the bar, charming her thoroughly. Finally, To could no longer just watch. He beckoned Asagi over and started scratching his chin possessively. The elder sister couldn't help but tease them when she suddenly noticed Asagi's Adam's apple. Then, another sister brought out the freshly laundered clothes, and the elder sister realized her mistake. After the customer left, To felt he had troubled Asagi a bit, and personally mixed a drink for him as an apology. Asagi thought To looked very handsome while mixing drinks. To, fond of this little puppy, invited him over for the night. Once home, To asked Asagi to change into loose home clothes and wait in the bathroom. Although confused, Asagi obediently went half-naked to the bathroom. Soon, To came in with a tray of bartending tools, planning to teach Asagi about mixing drinks due to his interest. After pouring the liquid into the container, To embraced Asagi from behind, guiding his hands on how to shake it, then let him try on his own. Unexpectedly, the container burst open shortly after shaking. Tu was not surprised and explained that it was a cheap container that would splash everywhere if not shaken correctly. Asagi then kept experiencing explosions until he successfully made a drink, understanding why Tu had chosen the bathroom for this lesson. Tu tasted it and honestly said it was not good. However, Asagi was confident and believed that one day he could become even better than Tu and make drinks for her anytime. Just as he finished speaking, the container burst again, showing there was still a long way to go. Recently, Suo hasn't been wearing men's clothing to school. The little fangirls, unable to see their prince, started speculating wildly. They remembered the last time they saw the prince was when they discovered he had a sister. Since then, Tokiwa has been constantly with his sister. Could the siblings have had a big fight over Tokiwa, and the prince got seriously injured, which is why he hasn't been coming to school? The more the fangirls thought about it, the more worried they became. When they saw Tokiwa ahead, they rushed up to ask about the prince's condition. Tokiwa, completely confused, was relieved that Suo was also there. Not wanting Suo in women's clothing to interact too much with them, Tokiwa quickly pulled Suo away. Seeing their close relationship, the fangirls were shocked, fearing that the prince might have been dumped by that guy. After all, the sister standing next to him looked more like his girlfriend. They thought the prince must be deep in the sorrow of a breakup. The thought made the fangirls heartbroken. However, the next day they saw Suo in men's clothing, which reassured them. Their prince seemed to be fine and even brightened up seeing Tokiwa. Both were wearing the same outfit they bought that day, looking like a couple. It turned out Suo was deliberately avoiding men's clothing to lower Tokiwa's guard. Their appearance didn't seem like that of a couple who had just broken up, but the fangirls' imaginations ran wild, thinking Tokiwa was playing mind games with their prince, neglecting him first, then wearing matching outfits to cheer him up when he was about to give up. What a terrible playboy. Unaware of being so negatively portrayed, Tokiwa curiously asked Suo if wearing matching outfits really made him happy. Suo was indeed happy, seeing how delighted the prince was. The two fangirls decided to leave it at that for now. On the other side, Hagi's sister insisted on meeting the handsome guy from last time, Kohaku, and even asked for his name. Hagi thought she was going to make a move on his crush, but his sister had already figured out that he liked the blonde, handsome guy. This revelation shocked Hagi even more. Even his sister could see it. Why couldn't Kohaku feel the same? Furthermore, his sister was not opposed to her brother's feelings, and even wanted to support him, thinking how great it sounded that her brother's boyfriend was a handsome guy. Just as Hagi was about to explain that Kohaku was actually a girl, his sister started to feel nauseous. Hagi quickly took her outside and then went back to settle the bill. However, she ran off and ended up meeting Kohaku at the subway station, drunkenly greeting him. Kohaku recognized her as Hagi's sister and immediately texted Hagi while staying with the sister. Despite being drunk, the sister still tried to help her brother by telling Kohaku that Hagi was definitely a good man. Although he had previously said he liked petite and cute girls, love was unstoppable when it came. Just then, Hagi finally arrived, greeted Kohaku, and quickly prepared to leave with his sister. Kohaku seemed hesitant to speak, but ultimately said nothing, only looking in the mirror after they left, realizing he was the opposite of Hagi's ideal type. Asagi has been frequently visiting a male dress-up bar recently and even completed a loyalty card, which she proudly showed off to Hagi. With the card, she could take a photo with her favorite bartender. Hagi was so jealous that he went to the bar with Asagi that very day and begged Tu for a loyalty card, realizing Tu had never offered him one. Hagi was thrilled, yet nervous to finally get the card, but Kohaku hadn't arrived yet, and Asagi had already gone to take pictures with To, who hugged her waist tightly. Watching them, Hagi grew envious and couldn't help fantasizing about himself with Kohaku. The next moment, To was cheek to cheek with Asagi, pinching her chin. Unable to bear it, Hagi exclaimed, "Do you always play so intensely?" He was about to say more when Suo shushed him physically, reminding him to keep quiet as there were other customers. Hagi felt melancholic, wanting to get closer to Kohaku, but always facing obstacles, which is why he was so excited about a blank loyalty card. He pondered his next steps when he overheard someone asking Suo about going to a nearby festival, inspiring him. The summer festival was perfect for fostering relationships. Just then, Kohaku arrived, her persona as imposing as ever. Hagi stood up, asking her publicly if she'd like to go to the festival with him, almost making it look like a proposal. Fortunately, no other customers noticed. Kohaku didn't refuse. Considering she had missed the last dessert festival with him, it was a chance to make it up. Thus, they planned a double date. However, Suo wouldn't miss an opportunity to develop her relationship with Tokiwa and brought 3 others along, supposedly to support Hagi and Kohaku. She and To coincidentally wore men's yukatas, dazzling the girls at the festival. To avoid drawing attention, Suo had even prepared masks in advance. With some time before Hagi and Kohaku met, Suo suggested they start with some fun, leading Tu and Asagi to a shooting booth to hit the target immediately, and with his assistance, Asagi was eager to try, finding the touch intriguing as to help to steady him. Tokiwa next door was embarrassing to watch. He was picking at a sugar cookie with Suo and quickly broke it due to lack of focus. Girls had already gathered around them. To help Suo concentrate, Tokiwa used his mask to shield the other side, pretending to embrace Suo. This, however, distracted Suo even more. She almost had it, but it broke again. Suo's meaningful look blamed Tokiwa. Then Asagi and To came over, clamoring for snacks. The 4 of them began to discuss what to eat. Tokiwa was the first to snap out of it, wondering if they had forgotten about Hagi and Kohaku. Meanwhile, Hagi was still waiting for Kohaku. He was fully prepared and determined to be a perfect escort today. But as he waited, he hesitated whether to pick her up at the station, worried she might stand him up again. Just then, a blonde girl in a yukata appeared. It was Kohaku in women's clothes. Hagi, who had been eagerly anticipating this, was instantly struck speechless by her cuteness. Kohaku had dressed this way thinking Hagi had invited her for the festival sweets, to make up for last time. Hearing Suo and to talk about yukatas, she figured she should wear one, having one at home. She hadn't expected to shock Hagi this much. He was just overwhelmingly surprised. He couldn't help but blurt out how cute she was, though Kohaku thought he meant the yukata. They finally met up and hurried to explore the festival. Kohaku, dressed as a woman, seemed much more at ease and bought lots of sweets. Hagi was too happy just watching her to care about the sweets. Especially watching Kohaku enjoy dango was delightful. When Kohaku saw apple candy being sold nearby, she was tempted, but recalled how sticky it made her mouth. Hearing this, Hagi immediately imagined Kohaku in men's clothes wiping her mouth and quickly changed the subject, suggesting they go fish for water balloons. Kohaku's competitive spirit kicked in, challenging Hagi to a contest. Hagi imagined Kohaku in men's attire challenging him, and he was madly charmed by the thought of Kohaku in men's clothes. He felt it was too unfair to Kohaku. Kohaku was right in front of him, yet he was thinking of another her. Hagi severely chastised himself in his mind. Unable to help himself, he bit into a red bean dumpling, his mouth filled with red bean paste. Kohaku simply wanted to remind him, but he quickly wiped it off. Kohaku clearly noticed that Hagi was off, but said nothing. After eating and drinking, the two found a chair to rest. Seeing that Hagi didn't want to speak, Kohaku suggested they could go back. Hagi didn't want it to end like this, and mustered the courage to ask if they could meet again. He wanted to go out only with Kohaku, yet he questioned himself which Kohaku he really wanted to be with. Kohaku, unaware of his thoughts, just smiled and said she was looking forward to it. Facing such a wonderful Kohaku, Hagi's sense of guilt grew stronger. When Tokiwa and the others visited the men's clothing bar again, the place had started a summer festival event. The staff were all in men's yukatas. To had the glowing bracelet from yesterday in his hand. Hearing Asagi say his had stopped working, to immediately put his bracelet on Asagi without hesitation. Suo whispered to Tokiwa that they had already had a yukata date yesterday. How was it not a double date? Tokiwa denied it subconsciously. They went solely for Hagi and Kohaku. How could it be a date? However, they actually didn't meet those two, so it was a double date. Then, Kohaku in men's yukata came over, asking about Hagi. Tokiwa said he was working. Kohaku didn't say much, but Suo and To could tell she was upset. Soon after, a few women in yukatas entered the bar. Tokiwa couldn't help but glance at them a few times, which upset Suo, the jealous type. She stretched her arm in front of Tokiwa, scolding him for looking at others when he had her. She told Tokiwa to imprint her image in a yukata in his mind, then leaned closer under the guise of the yukata. Hearing someone call her, she left, intentionally brushing Tokiwa's arm with her finger. Tokiwa was very nervous, convincing himself that Suo would do the same with other customers. To watched all this, perhaps gearing up for something big. Today, Asagi wasn't watching To. Instead, he kept staring at Kohaku. His gaze was too obvious. Kohaku, deciding to address it directly, told Asagi to speak up if he wanted to talk to him. Asagi hesitantly asked Kohaku to teach him how to be cool, as To had previously commented that he wasn't the handsome type. Asagi wanted to mimic Kohaku, who he thought of as a cool, domineering boss. Kohaku, pleased to hear that Asagi thought he played the domineering boss role well, wrote down some of his usual lines for Asagi to learn. Just then, To came over to ask what drink he wanted. Asagi immediately put his new knowledge to use, saying, "You should know what I like to drink, right?" Both To and Kohaku were speechless. Asagi waited in the shop until To finished work, as he was modeling for To again. They went to a karaoke bar together. While To was calling to order food, Asagi was struggling with when to use the lines he had learned. Then, To said he wanted to see Asagi's feet. As Asagi took off his shoes and recited his lines, To couldn't stand it anymore and told him to stop imitating Kohaku. Then, lifting one of Asagi's legs onto his shoulder and moving closer, To physically demonstrated what being truly cool was about, staring intently and saying, "Don't look at anyone but me." Right then, a waiter opened the door, saw them, and quickly retreated. To realize the posture was a bit inappropriate, but Asagi didn't mind and even praised To's performance, asking her to teach him. To felt that Asagi was fine just the way he was, which pacified him. Next, To took various photos of Asagi's feet, and the atmosphere in the room kept the waiter from finding a chance to re-enter. That evening, Asagi went home with To help out, and they worked through the night to finish a project on a confinement theme. The naive Asagi thought it was a detective theme, but it was actually part of a collaboration with others. While organizing, To explained the theme to Asagi, who noticed handcuffs on the table and eagerly tried them on, To then handcuffed him, and Asagi, even more excited, handcuffed To as well. They ended up locked together, and once the cuffs were on, they couldn't find the key. To had to rush the original manuscript to the post office. They were stuck, and had to head out like that, handcuffed together, catching the eyes of all passers-by. Some might even think it was some kind of special play. Asagi, clueless, ran around everywhere, and To had no choice but to run along, never having been so tired before. Just when they caught their breath, a car drove towards them. In a panic, Asagi pulled To into his arms. To was inspired, and couldn't wait to incorporate this scene into a comic, realizing this was the best use of handcuffs. As they continued towards the post office, Asagi suddenly noticed To's wrists were red from the friction. Recalling how he had been pulling To around, he felt guilty immediately, but To didn't mind and even thought it could serve as reference material. Asagi wasn't comforted, believing To's hands, capable of drawing comics and mixing cocktails, should be cherished. Talking about it, Asagi's eyes welled up with tears. To suggested they visit a boutique before the post office, where they had bought the handcuffs, hoping to buy another pair and get a key to unlock them. However, the packaging stated that they included a safety device that didn't require a key. Sure enough, Asagi pressed it, and they unlocked, leaving To speechless. Back home, Asagi still worried about the mark on To's wrist, thinking it wouldn't look good to customers, so he gave To a wristband he had used. To wasn't interested at first, but changed their mind when they heard it was Asagi's. Suo saw it when To changed clothes at the bar and casually asked about it, but To wouldn't say anything. Recently, the air conditioning was a bit cold. Kohaku still wore just a shirt and occasionally shivered. Another staff member suggested they swap uniforms, as each wore a different one, thinking a change might also bring a fresh look to the customers. They decided by drawing lots. Today, the first two customers who came in were immediately struck by Kohaku in formal attire. It was fantastic. Wearing such clothes, Kohaku resembled a young master from a wealthy family. On the other hand, To, who was mixing drinks, looked so handsome that it took everyone by surprise. However, he found the clothes inconvenient for bartending, and even thought about taping them in place. Suo, wearing only a shirt today, instantly mesmerized the female customers. appearing like a carefree prince, yet to felt it was odd to speak normally while dressed like that. Suo then decided to switch his persona, effortlessly charming the ladies. One woman even opened her wallet, ready to spend whatever it took. Kohaku thought Suo was incredibly impressive, but To was busy taking photos to send to Tokiwa. Eventually, due to the strong sense of discordance, everyone decided to switch back to their regular outfits. With summer vacation recently starting, the bar has been busier. Suo has to work several days in a row, but handling all customers with the utmost propriety is no issue for him. However, even Suo was finding the consecutive days of intense work exhausting. Today, when she came in, To noticed her pale complexion, but Suo insisted on working. To called Tokiwa to bring some items over. When Suo saw Tokiwa, she was pleasantly surprised and pulled him inside. However, Tokiwa first touched her face, confirming it was indeed hot, to then requested leave on her behalf and asked Tokiwa to take Suo home. Since she was still ill, Suo didn't invite Tokiwa to stay. Tokiwa, relieved that Suo seemed okay, suddenly remembered the items he bought and rang the doorbell again. No one answered, and the door was unlocked, so he entered and found Suo collapsed at the doorway. In a panic, he carried her princess style to the sofa, took out the jelly and fever medication he had bought, and cared for her. This assertive side of Tokiwa deeply moved Suo. Facing his reproach, she admitted she didn't want to appear weak. Tokiwa handed her the medication, proud to see this rare side of Suo. When Suo mentioned changing clothes and removing her wig, Tokiwa didn't react until she teased him about staying to watch. He then quickly fled. The next day, To and Kohaku came to visit the sick Suo, only to find her condition worsened. Suo playfully blamed Tokiwa. Hagi has been troubled lately, especially since he went to the festival with Kohaku, who was dressed as a woman. When he first met Kohaku in men's clothes, he wondered why she didn't dress as a woman. Now that she did, he found himself missing her in men's attire. His sister even joked that he looked like a cheater, making Hagi doubt himself. Just then, Kohaku called asking for help. Hagi quickly took 2 friends to the address Kohaku mentioned, only to find it was by the sea. There, they saw Suo and To, dressed as men, surrounded by girls, while Kohaku was busy serving customers. The cafe, owned by her relative, was short-staffed, so Kohaku had called friends for help. Suo and To's arrival only made it busier, prompting Kohaku to call Hagi. Hiding in the back, Hagi was relieved to see Kohaku in men's clothes again, and immediately offered to help, although he still felt awkward around her. As they got busy, Kohaku maintained a bossy persona, which the girls loved. One tried to take a photo, but Kohaku stopped her, reminding her of the no-photo rule, charming her in the process. Hagi realized Kohaku didn't need his protection, which saddened him a bit. When their eyes met again, he quickly turned away. Later, a group of male customers didn't realize Kohaku was a girl and commented on her being too frail, suggesting she join them at the gym. Watching this, Hagi panicked, but knew Kohaku could handle herself. However, when one man tried to touch her abs, Hagi intervened, quickly pulling Kohaku away from the situation. While Hagi was alarmed, Kohaku was unfazed, knowing they didn't realize she was disguised as a man. Hagi was troubled because he hadn't even touched Kohaku's hand yet, but those men had. Hagi's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but he kept everything to himself, which confused Kohaku. She asked if he was troubled, but Hagi just covered his face and ran away, finally able to breathe. Asagi, seeing the happy tourists playing on the beach, couldn't resist joining them. It was a rare beach visit, and there was no time to play until the manager told them they could take turns to rest. Asagi immediately rushed into the sea with 2 friends, and the 3 big men started splashing each other, much to Suo and the others' amusement. They all ended up falling into the water, soaking wet when they returned. Asagi showed to a hermit crab he found, while Suo brought a towel for Tokiwa but didn't just hand it over. She insisted on drying him herself. The 2 flirted in front of Hagi, which made him uncomfortable. Tokiwa quickly denied they were flirting, but Suo teased, asking if it was only a problem if they did it in front of Hagi, then pulled Tokiwa by the wrist and left, leaving Hagi even more unsettled. Suo, holding onto Tokiwa, returned to the beach. His handsome face quickly captivated the female tourists, but Tokiwa noticed a sunburn on her neck. Suo decided to reapply sunscreen, just as many were doing for their partners on the beach. Without asking, Suo pulled Tokiwa down to sit, and Tokiwa couldn't help but imagine himself applying sunscreen on Suo, fearing the wrath of her fans. However, in reality, it was he who was being applied sunscreen on. After many such instances, Tokiwa was no longer surprised, but this time Suo went further, lifting his shirt to apply it to his back, attracting envious glances from nearby girls. Not wanting to draw attention, Tokiwa tried to escape, but accidentally fell into the water, pulling Suo down with him. As they got up, both were stunned, looking at each other's faces. Suo was the first to react, joking about how unprincely she looked, so dazzling that Tokiwa couldn't open his eyes. A wave hit them the next second, soaking their clothes that had just dried. Suo simply started splashing water with him in the sea, and they both returned to the shop drenched. After all the customers left, they finally got to rest properly. The manager personally thanked Tokiwa and the others. Hagi, however, hoped that the manager wouldn't ask Kohaku and the others for help again. As a thank you, the manager gave them handheld fireworks to play with. Suo, Tokiwa, and Asagi changed their clothes and came back. Tokiwa and Asagi were used to seeing Suo and To in women's clothes, so they were not surprised. Only Hagi was shocked and still couldn't look directly at Kohaku. The six went to the beach to set off fireworks. Seeing Asagi so happy with the fireworks, To couldn't resist and started taking photos with his phone. Not for reference this time, but just for the memories. Asagi then pulled her in for a selfie, and they took many pictures together. Suo and Tokiwa went for a romantic vibe, watching the fireworks fade in their hands. Kohaku walked over, as Hagi seemed reluctant to be alone with her. When Hagi turned around and saw Kohaku in women's clothes, he still pictured her in men's clothes, which confused him even more. Then Kohaku handed him a sparkler, and they watched it burn out together. Struggling to make conversation, Kohaku directly asked if she had done something wrong. Since the summer festival, she felt something was off, and Hagi was acting strange today. She guessed she might have made a mistake, although she wasn't sure what it was. Still, she chose to apologize to Hagi, hoping to clear the air. This really panicked Hagi, realizing he had been so obviously upset and had hurt Kohaku, making him feel guilty. Thinking about his sister's opinion of him, he wished he could slap himself and blurted out, "I'm questioning whether I'm leading someone on." Kohaku was stunned by his words and asked, "What are you talking about?" Hagi admitted to seeing two people at once. Kohaku's face changed immediately. "I didn't know you were this kind of person," she said. Hagi quickly explained it was actually a friend. "This friend better not be yourself," she replied. However, Kohaku seemed to believe him, and even relaxed a bit. She had been worried that she was to blame and had let her imagination run wild. Kohaku's honesty instantly made Hagi find her adorable. Hagi then began making up a story about his friend, who liked a girl that often dressed as a boy. His friend struggled to see her as the same person in male and female clothes. When she dressed as a man, he longed to see her in women's clothes, but when she did, he kept picturing her as a man. Others said it seemed like cheating, so his friend was distressed. After hearing this, Kohaku was confused. "How is that seeing two people? It's the same person," she said. Or was it that Hagi's friend liked neither version? Hagi quickly denied this and made a heartfelt confession to Kohaku, pretending it was from his friend. Sadly, she didn't catch on. Kohaku asked Hagi if he remembered when they had ice cream together while she was dressed as a man. She was self-conscious about other people's stares, thinking it odd for two men to eat dessert together. But Hagi had said that enjoying good food had nothing to do with gender. His friend should feel the same way, breaking free from appearances and truly liking the girl herself. Such a person is admirable, not a cheater, he argued. As long as you're clear about your own feelings, there's no problem. It's because both are her that my friend likes her. Kohaku's explanation made Hagi realize the truth. Meanwhile, Asagi and others started setting off big fireworks. Kohaku got up first and pulled Hagi to his feet. It was their first time holding hands. Hagi, thrilled, rushed to show off to Tokiwa. Kohaku was relieved to see Hagi spirited again. Reflecting on Hagi's words, she belatedly realized the girl Hagi loved for her male attire was right there among them. Tonight, 6 people are staying overnight at the beach. The manager booked rooms for them, but unfortunately, only arranged for Tokiwa and the other 2 guys. Suo and the other 2 girls will stay directly at the shop and go straight to work at the men's bar tomorrow. Thinking about not seeing Kohaku tomorrow makes Hagi inevitably melancholic. Asagi reminds him nearby, why not visit the shop to see her? Hagi is shocked. He just saw her yesterday, and showing up at the shop the next day might bother them. However, Asagi seems unaware of this concern. Since they didn't bring anything, they need to stop by the supermarket later. It feels a bit like a graduation trip. Tokiwa checks the map on his phone and finds many interesting places nearby. They were busy working today and had no time to explore. They decide to roam around before heading back tomorrow afternoon. They buy some snacks and head back to the hotel. Hagi, still looking at the hand that held Kohaku's, feels a mix of emotions. He wonders if Kohaku has ever had a boyfriend. She's so handsome and cute, he mutters, and starts to drown his sorrows in drink. It wouldn't be surprising if Kohaku had dated someone, but it doesn't matter as long as she's single now. How could she attend a mixer if she had a boyfriend? Hagi doesn't know what type of guys Kohaku likes. Tokiwa suggests asking her directly and even calls her now. But even a drunk Hagi doesn't want to disturb her at this hour, so he just asks his friends to drink with him. The three who promised to wake up early, all except Tokiwa, fail to get up. Tokiwa can't rouse them and goes out alone. Surprisingly, it's lively early in the morning. He walks into a crowd and sure enough sees Suo in men's attire. Suo quickly notices Tokiwa and lights up at the sight of him. Hearing that Tokiwa wants to explore the area, she immediately offers to join him. Despite saying yesterday they would go straight to the bar, how could she miss a chance to walk with Tokiwa? Suo sends him a message. Tu, standing at the window and seeing Tokiwa and Suo walking side by side, can't help but smile in relief. While Tokiwa and Suo were out, they saw grilled octopus for sale. Tokiwa immediately felt hungry. Suo also wanted some, but thought it was too much for one person. Tokiwa just bought one, but to his surprise, it was shaped like a heart. Passers-by saw it and asked to take photos, which made Suo jealous. She quickly made up an excuse to pull Tokiwa away, inadvertently exciting the group of girls even more. After finding a shady spot, Tokiwa offered Suo a bite of the octopus since she had mentioned wanting some, but Suo, holding 2 bottles of water, avoided taking one. Instead, she insisted that Tokiwa feed her. Although Suo's bite destroyed the heart shape, the octopus somehow formed an even larger heart. It seemed even the octopus was supporting them. The two continued to stroll and eventually reached a high platform overlooking the sea, where there was a bell reputed to grant wishes. The instructions said to think of a wish and ring it 3 times. Naturally, they decided to try it. Tokiwa couldn't think of a wish, but Suo had one. She handed the rope to Tokiwa, asking him to ring it with her. Their fingers interlocked through the rope. If Tokiwa had no wish, Suo wanted him to help pray for hers to come true. Tokiwa complied, and after ringing the bell, he asked what Suo's wish was. However, she quickly changed the subject, hinting that Tokiwa would find out in time. After walking around, Suo returned to work at the men's bar, where she remained popular with the customers. They even expressed a desire to have a mixer with Suo-sama, and asked what kind of outfit she would choose for such an event. Suo spread her arms wide, indicating she would wear the outfit she had on. The girls screamed, unable to imagine Suo wearing that outfit at a mixer. Unbeknownst to them, the 3 men present had already seen it. Though their feelings were complex at the time, they hardly had a chance to appreciate her beauty. While Hagi was chatting away, Kohaku suddenly came over and urged him to order. Kohaku was in her bossy persona. Hagi hesitantly asked her about her type, but his voice was so low that Kohaku couldn't hear him. Hagi gave up on the question and asked Kohaku to make a cocktail she recommended. Meanwhile, To didn't ask Asagi. He just prepared a drink for him. Asagi took a sip and began guessing the ingredients, thinking it was gin and vodka, but she was not entirely right. The drink was actually made with gin, syrup, and egg white. Hagi listened to their conversation, surprised at Asagi's cocktail knowledge. Asagi mentioned she had been practicing recently. Tokiwa hadn't ordered yet and was looking at the menu when Suo came over to make some recommendations. She quietly asked Tokiwa if he wanted to go to another mixer. Tokiwa immediately denied it, indicating he probably wouldn't want to go to one again. Then, Tu brought over a bucket of sticks for a game of kings, and everyone drew one, wondering what story would unfold next.